Everyone, it's EK from ekgormandesigns.com, and I am sneaking in today with a little coloring and construction tutorial for oddball art using the Creepy Cute Chronicles number 35 freebie. If you're not aware that every Friday night the oddball art team puts out a newsletter sharing all the happenings going on, and in that newsletter there is a free digital stamp every week. This is this week's stamp. It is a really cute cup of creepy hot chocolate. And I thought, well, it's January. I'm making Valentine's Day cards. Why don't I make one oddball art style? So, if you're not familiar with oddball art, everything's just a slightly creeped out, a little bit cute, but still creepy. I've got just that little bit sense of twisted humor. So I thought I'd make a Valentine's Day card that had that little bit of a wicked sense of humor, making it look slightly like what you would do normally for a love card, but slightly obscured. You know, how many times do you make your loved ones a cup of hot chocolate with a skull and crossbones on it and with marshmallow flying bats? I colored today's image up using my Copics, and to create this deep, rich brown, I pulled out the E10 series. The later ones have a really nice hint of red within it, making it just kind of have that burnished hardwood feel. I find coloring, and I actually had this great debate, like, was this the hot chocolate or was this whipped cream flowing over? And I figured if I colored it white, it wouldn't read right. So I went ahead and colored it chocolate-like, as if the cup's been splattered or splashed by said flying marshmallow bats. I went ahead and wanted to make sure that the crawl and crossbones wasn't lost in the translations, like that it really popped out so you knew we were dealing with something slightly different. So I colored it in the way I normally color bones, which is using E40, E42, and 44. And then instead of letting the eyes glow yellow, which I normally do with my skull and crossbones, I let them glow pink because, you know, Valentine's Day. And then I colored in the cup. I will warn you, I speed this up a whole lot because no one wants to watch me color the cup red. Because of all the different lines and stuff, it took me, to get this base layer of color down, it took a long time. And in fact, if you watch carefully, you'll notice little pockets where I've missed little spots, just because this takes quite a bit of thought to not, like, accidentally go over. For those of you who use Copics regularly, you know that when you screw up with red, it's really hard to push the color out. Red is just one of those really staining colors, so when you mess up with red, you mess up. And if you color first with red, your lighter colors can pick the red up and move it. So red's got to be the last color you color with, and you got to do it carefully because you can't blend it out. Actually, in fact, here in a little bit, I try to blend out some of the red. And you can see I push it back just a bit with the colorless blender, but it's not 100% successful the way it would be with other colors. I dropped in some shadows trying to create the effect that the cup was in fact round and there was movement and shape and form within this cup. I'm not as successful today as I normally am, but the splashing over, my dimensions were just thrown off. Like I said, there are some days that you're more successful than others, and this just wasn't the most. But I think I got a nice crisp red color on it. Here's where I use this colorless blender, and I'm trying to push back a little bit of my edging. And like I said, I get it pushed back, but not 100%. I noticed that I had the little blips of color, so I did go back in and fill them in. And I wanted to do something special with the marshmallows. So I pulled out this Perfect Pearls formula and just kind of blotted it into the marshmallows. It reads here, it doesn't read in the photos. But here it reads like they're puffy and they're fluffy and they have that sense of like maybe on the verge of melting. It really worked. And I think you can see it here in the video where it just kind of feels puffy in all the right ways. For the eyes, I wanted something also special. I wanted it to feel like it was glowing through the cup. So I added just a little bit of glossy accents to make them nice. And I did let this dry. I will let you. I walked away for about an hour and a half before I brought in the Distress Oxide and muddled up the white cardstock that the digital stamp was printed out on. And then it came time to construct the card. I was just originally going to layer the card, but I decided maybe it would be fun to open the card up to the image inside the card. So I cut some frames, and I cut a piece. I don't actually have any paper to make a 6x6 card, so I always have to make my frame. And I do that by cutting down a piece of white heavy stock, cardstock, and to 6 inches by 7 inches, and then scoring at the 6-inch mark and folding it over. And you'll see I adhere these 2 pieces of paper that I die cut out with some dies. I adhere these 2 pieces of paper to the card frame, creating my open front flap. This one was a little trickier than normally when I make 6x6 cards because there's a giant oval in the center of the front flap. And that's inch perimeter I make has a little hangover. So you'll see I actually have to pull out my X-Acto knife and trim things up, making the card a little more unstable than I like, but it still works. It's definitely securely adhered. So I glued everything down. You're going to notice I made a boo-boo somewhere in here. And I think I covered it up pretty nicely, but I initially adhered it badly and had to pull it back up, tearing my paper just a smidgen. But you don't go back and start over again. You just figure out how to correct it. And I did. So, haha! No need to start over. You can just fix. For the inside of the card, I took another piece of dark printed, no, it's not Valentine's. It's just black and white printed cardstock. And, adhered it over the frame, over the focal image, so that way it framed my cup of hot chocolate perfectly. And then I adhered everything together down onto the card base, inside the card. That way it peeked through the oval. I very smartly adhered it to the bottom and not the top. I've made this mistake before and remembered. Now the card needed a sentiment, so I pulled out this little sentiment that I found in my stash of stamps and thought it was the perfect one to make my Valentine's Day card with a twist. It says, "It's like you were made for me." I didn't say that right. It's like you were created just for me. Meaning like, oh, like somebody I love, you were created just for me. And you'll see when you open the card up a little bit later, it's not for a person, it's for an object, which I thought was kind of funny. I actually will be giving this card to one of my children who is obsessed with hot chocolate. I think she likes hot chocolate at this point more than she likes us as adults. Likes her parents, likes hot chocolate more. So this will actually, in fact, be her Valentine's Day card this year because she will get a real kick out of the fact I made her a cup of hot chocolate on a card instead of making something that says, "I love you, I think you're a good kid." I backed the sentiment with just a bit of that printed paper I'd used from the inside, and then popped up the sentiment so it was 3-dimensional, and then hung over the oval a little bit. Now, I saved you the torture of trying to watch me tie a bow. I'm terrible at it. But what I do, and I think is important, is I always squeeze a little bit of liquid adhesive into the bow so you can't accidentally untie it. And I set it aside to dry. Here's where I pulled out a retired stamp company stamp set and pulled out the words hot chocolate because, again, it's exactly like you were created for me, hot chocolate, not my kid, not my love, but the drink itself. Because, again, my kids get a wicked sense of humor, and I know she'll appreciate it. And I wanted to tuck the sentiment inside under the top sentiment, so when you opened up the card, it actually was a surprise that it said it. I trimmed the sentiment up just a little bit and pulled out the die cut of the heart paper and backed it with that. Again, trimming everything up just so it worked. Finally, you'll notice it's crooked, so I pulled out my scissors and fixed it. Because I don't do, yeah. And I adhered it inside the card. That's it for the basic construction of this slightly creepy Valentine's Day card. Make sure you check out this week's Creepy Cute Chronicles. If you're not subscribed yet, make sure you subscribe because you don't want to miss out on things like this. Thanks for watching today, guys, and happy crafting.